It's time for the Onyx News. Extraterrestrials, time anomalies, dimensions, remote viewing, UFOs, UAPs, and USOs, ghostly encounters, abductions, Bigfoot, and more. Your end of the week news source for everything unexplained. Here is your host for the Onyx News Podcast, Margie K.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Onyx News. We have a good edition for you here this evening. I do want to mention one thing before we get started. Please check out the Onyx Network website, onyxnetwork.com, because we've got a new page on there, and it is a list of haunted sites in the United States, most haunted sites. If you would like to add to the list, or if you would like to share your own experiences about some of these places, we will be happy to take that information. Just send it to us through the website, and we will get it up. So that's a brand new page with a lot of different sites across the United States in every single state. And there is a blog page. Just check our blog out. There's one for every single state individually. So if you want to take a look at that, Violet Wisdom put that together for us. So thank you very much, Violet. Tonight, my guest is Darcy Weir. Darcy resides in Alberta, Edmonton, Canada, and has been working. He's been on a mission to bring the world's most captivating mysteries about UAPs, ETs, cryptids, and beyond into the global spotlight through his talents as a filmmaker. During the course of his 13-year career, Weir has produced a remarkable 20 productions, 18 feature-length documentaries, and 2 docuseries, each accessible on Amazon Prime and Apple. Weir's goal is to shine a new light on these enigmatic topics, thus making the information about them more accessible to the general public. Through his diverse, gripping, and well-researched films and TV presentation, Darcy Weir has become both a well-respected as a high-profile voice within the global disclosure movement. And then I've got his websites that are going to be coming up here in just a few minutes. Welcome to the program, Darcy.
Hey, Margie. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I know you're a busy person, and you also have a new baby on hand. So thank you for taking some time out this evening.
Hey, my pleasure. Happy to be here. I love your show.
Well, you've got a new movie out, and we are going to be talking about that this evening. But let's just go back in time a little bit, and I'm going to ask you, how did you get interested in these paranormal subjects?
You know, just a fascination with things that are, on the fringe of our reality at a young age. I was a kid watching things like X-Files with my family on a Sunday night. And I guess science fiction and horror kind of fed my interest into this stuff, but sometimes fact is stranger than fiction. So I became a filmmaker. I went to university and I went to a technical school and figured out how to do production and film and edit and all that stuff. And eventually I put together my first documentary on this kind of UFO, UAP, paranormal stuff. And it just stuck. I like it. I think it's very interesting.
Well, it is. It's never a dull moment, right?
No.
Well, you've produced 20 projects now, covering everything from UAPs to ETs to remote viewing, and now with your newest film, Into Psychic Phenomenon. You've interviewed dozens of top experts in the world on these topics. So how do you think all of these subjects are related?
Well, I think because they're all on the fringe, like they're all not accepted by the masses. That is cryptids, UFOs, psychic phenomenon like remote viewing and mediumship and, precognitive dreams and stuff like that. They live on the fringe of our reality, and believe it or not, once you start talking to psychics, sooner or later UFO targets kind of come up, right? Or UFO experiences. And then if you talk to experiencers or abductees, telepathy comes up, and like voice to skull sort of encounters with UFO craft and stuff like that, communications that come into their head without them seeing an entity, or sometimes, seeing mouths moving like we use. So I think they have direct connections in terms of stories that people are telling, and then they're just on the fringe together.
Well, as an investigator myself, I can say I agree with you on those points. That does seem to be there's some commonalities there with witnesses. For instance, when we're doing an investigation with a UFO witness, we always ask, do you have psychic abilities? And then did you have them before your event, your experience, or did you have them after? And a lot of times these people suddenly have psychic abilities after their connection. Do you have any thoughts on why that might be?
I haven't the faintest clue, really. I will say that even abductees have claimed that they've had this sort of psychic connection to the phenomenon afterwards as well. So famous case, Pascagoula, 1973, with Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker. Both men would go on to talk about an ongoing contact that they were having. And most of it for Charles Hickson was psychic. He wouldn't see them. He might see another craft in the sky or UFO, but he would never see the entities on board again. Calvin would go on board again, and he would get like these telepathic, he had this sort of like download moment with this lady that he encountered, and he saw like a apocalyptic future with wars, famine, disease, and all this stuff. And yeah, pretty interesting that, Betty and Barney Hill, same sort of thing. It just seems to be a commonly reported aspect to the phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, on the flip side, it seems that people who have poltergeist phenomena in their house are also UFO witnesses or ET witnesses. Have you spoken with any people while you're doing interviews for these movies that have had similar things?
Well, I know that that's something that's been reported around the Skinwalker Ranch with the folks that have witnessed all that stuff, including the sort of hitchhiker effect, where apparently this paranormal activity follows the Skinwalker Ranch experiencer back home off the ranch. So I think that's an interesting thing. But I was at the Shag Harbor incident or Shag Harbor Expo conference 2 weeks ago. And there's a Halifax-based paranormal group there that does like ghost reporting and research and stuff like that. And many of those people have also seen UFOs. So it seems to correlate with what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's very strange. It'd be nice if we could solve that mystery sometime. When you mentioned the Betty Barney Hill case and the Travis Walton cases, did you study those?
Yeah. I did a documentary called Being Taken back in 2018, and we interviewed Travis Walton. We interviewed Kathleen Marden, who's the niece of Betty Hill, and Stanton Friedman was in that documentary. talking about the Betty Hill and Barney Hill case. He was very close to it before he passed away. So, and we covered many different abduction cases in that and kind of wrapped it all up in one thesis.
In your interviews with witnesses, did you run across any of the witnesses, or I should rather say, do you believe that they believe what happened to them really happened?
Oh, 100%. Calvin Parker believed it happened to him. Charlie Hickson, another witness that's come forward that said that they were abducted with their husband during the Pascagoula 1973 night of October the 11th was Jerry and Maria Blair. And I have their hypnosis session. She's fully convinced that she was taken.
Yeah. Sometimes that is the only evidence.
Sometimes that is. You're absolutely right. But with Travis Walton, for example, you have 4 different witnesses to the sightings, and then you have radiation trace evidence at the site and weird growing trees afterwards. And I think even with Pascagoula, there were dozens of witnesses leading up to and after that night that there was a UFO flap happening in Mississippi at that time. Police officers, Sheriff Fred Diamond, they all sort of testified to seeing the same stuff. It's just these people said they were on board what was apparently in the sky.
Right. I'm sure you've been following the UAP congressional hearings. What do you think is the current state of the big D, the disclosure?
Big old D. I think that it's interesting, for one, definitely. And many people like you and I and your listeners on X probably are very steeped in the information that's out there about UFOs, non-human intelligence, yada, yada, yada. What's happening in Congress right now is really education sessions for these congressional members. What people may not understand from our side of things is that not everybody out there in Congress are like Tim Burchett. This guy is super educated on the history of this phenomenon and what's going on, but he's like an anomaly, right? Many of these congressmen and congresswomen know not even 1% of what is going on or what has happened historically and the anomalous nature of this. So the congressional hearings, to me, kind of serve as that gateway to education, public awareness in DC and throughout the United States within that sort of congressional setting. And I hope it's successful. I hope it's something that continues and eventually you have 40 Tim Burchetts,
Yeah, I think that is a good point, because I know the Congress people are busy people, but this is a big, big subject, and they should all be as familiar with it as Tim Burchett is. So hopefully that will happen someday. I think most of us have kind of resigned ourselves to the fact that we don't think that the government, quote, is going to come forward with a big disclosure, but disclosure has already started in other forms. And of course, UFO sightings, there's an uptick, at least as far as I see as an investigator and, with MUFON, I see that there's an uptick, and there's different types of UFOs are showing up now. Have you spoken to anybody about that? Has anybody mentioned some strange looking UFOs to you?
Yeah, actually, I was speaking with one of your chief analysts at MUFON 2 weeks ago, Mark D'Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a huge uptick in reporting. His opinion is that much of it is misidentification because of things like this drone phenomenon that's been happening. More people are looking to the skies than ever before. And of course, they've got their camera phones out and they're just recording like crazy. So you get a lot of stuff that's posted online that's not fully vetted. And, organizations like MUFON are good for starting to look through that data and vet it properly. There are some really cool UFO videos. There's a kind of famous one that's went viral online of a drone during the New Jersey drone swarm approaching what looks like an orb in the sky. And then when it gets really close, it kind of gets a bit of a zap and falls directly out of the sky after that. So that one looks kind of anomalous to me, but other ones just look like drones. And I think the drone stuff is a head scratcher for a lot of people. But to me, it's, terrestrial tech. It's just something that's being run very secretively. And, the military intelligence community can do that.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion. I think a lot of these drones acted in ways that the general public didn't think was possible, didn't think we had the technology, but I'll bet it's ours. It's probably government. The orbs, though, that's a strange thing. And there's just more reports about these balls of light. Some of them, you can see something inside of them. Maybe it looks like a little ET or there's a face inside of it. To me, they give me the idea that they are probes, that they're just checking things out and then they're going back to wherever, the mothership or whatever. Have you interviewed people that talk about things like that?
Well, I know Chris Bledsoe has been talking about these orbs for quite a long time. And yeah, it seems that they are a prevalent part of the phenomenon that's reported all the time, whether that's a sphere that is metallic looking or some kind of like light orb that you're discussing. Again, Skinwalker Ranch, you get sort of the report of a blue orb and red orbs, and if they're blue, run away, that sort of lore to them. I've never seen one with my naked eye that, a light orb that I could say, hey, like, this is definitely, but I've seen videos, and I'm curious about it. Hopefully some of it's not just ball lightning. Maybe some of it's, like you said, could be some kind of drone, but from a non-human intelligence that's taking a look at our planet and seeing what's going on.
Mm-hmm. It just makes sense the way they behave. Let's talk about your 2016 movie, The Unwanted Sasquatch. What is that about?
Sure. So that is about the history of Bigfoot / Sasquatch. I got a chance to meet the native indigenous tribe that the word Sasquatch originates from in British Columbia, Canada. They're called the Stahelis, and the word was actually Sisket, but the English man that was living on their reserve as a teacher named J.W. Burns in the 1800s, he kind of changed the word for his own interests and called it the Sasquatch. But really, we examine some of the most credible sightings of Bigfoot, including the Patterson-Gimlin footage and many others. And we speak to, a really powerful figure in the sort of scientific anthropology community that took this seriously, Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, who's actually now passed, unfortunately. Yeah. What a nice guy. Open mind, very analytical. And his pitch is, look, these things, by all accounts, seem to be like a unfully recognized, upright, ape-like hominid that's been living in the deep forest terrains of North America for a long time. And, you know, sometimes we catch a sighting of them and they catch a sighting of us, and we usually go our own ways.
True. Okay. That sounds interesting. And then the Underground 2021 was when this was done. What has the government long been hiding beneath our feet? Well, I'm interested in that because in Kansas City, we seem to have a lot of underground tunnels and underground drilling going on. And sometimes we can even hear traffic under our feet that nobody's talking about. Is that a worldwide phenomenon?
I think it's something that would strategically be worldwide in terms of building a fortification for your military or your intelligence community to keep a continuity of government and that type of thing in sort of cataclysmic or really bad war times. But in terms of the United States, you know, the lore goes really deep that there are multiple underground facilities that are used to keep clandestine research, like reverse engineering of extraterrestrial craft and technologies, away from the public eye. And, you know, sound, people can't see it either or hear it. Mm-hmm. But I know before we even started the live, we talked a little bit about Catherine Austin Fitz, and she's kind of done that deep dive into trillions of dollars going missing post 9/11. And she's convinced that the truck drivers are reporting that there's a whole tunnel and underground sort of, I guess you would call it, extra civilization that's been built under the parts of the United States strategically, again, to keep continuity of government. But, you know, it just makes sense that it's also, again, a place to hide research.
For sure. And what better place to hide than where it's not accessible to the public at all, and you can't even see it. So can't question it. Got a question from the chat from Carl. He says, would you have an idea how many cases are hoaxes? UFO cases.
I'll get in trouble for this, and I'm used to it, I guess, by now. But aspects of the Billy Meyer case were considered hoaxes. The SSP sort of world with, you know, Good and multiple other people that supported that, it seemed to be a hoax, through testimony that we got later anyways with depositions, that this was not a physical secret space adventure. It was apparently some kind of astral or meditative practice. There's lots. I'm convinced that, you know, maybe the Nazca mummies are not really aliens, but just human cadavers that are ancient, which we would call a mummy. So I get in trouble for saying this. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but that's just my opinion. And, you know, take it or leave it with respect to you and me.
Well, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and it's always based on what they know, what they've been exposed to. So, do you think UFOs are attracted to disturbed people, Carl asks?
Or you could flip that and say, do UFOs disturb people? And I think there could be a correlation there, you know? Definitely when it's something that is not accepted by mainstream media, academia, mainstream science, it can be disturbing to people because this is not supposed to exist. So it might create what some people have coined ontological shock and unrest for the person that's witnessed this. So yeah, I think if you're not already disturbed, you probably might be after you see a UFO.
I agree. I've seen it happen. Some people cannot take change or anything out of the norm very well. It's extremely disturbing to them. While somebody else, they might think about it, they might not like it, but they're not going to let it destroy their life. Yeah, it just depends on the personality, I guess. We are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Darcy's brand new film, and we will show a trailer on that. So stay with us.
The Onyx Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full-spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the Onyx Network website at onyxnetwork.com. That's onyxnetwork.com. The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie K and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Onyx Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unxmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unxmedia.com or amazon.com.
And welcome back to UNX News. I'm your host, Margie K, and with me this evening is Darcy Weir, and he is the filmmaker, and he just released The Psychic Phenomenon, and this is his 20th original production. Congratulations, Darcy, for getting that. That's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you very much, Margie.
And especially the number of films that you've done in such a short period of time is quite an accomplishment. So what gave you what was the impetus for this movie?
Well, essentially I was at a conference, Contact in the Desert, and I had just seen a lecture put on by Tracey Dolan, who is wife of Richard Dolan. She's a researcher of the mystery school stuff and remote viewing. She essentially did a presentation at that time, I think it was about 2023, on quantum sort of science, the human brain, how it might be this like room temp quantum computer. And given that we're this kind of like 3D creature and we're the master of this domain on Earth, supposedly, maybe the brain is this kind of like mechanism that or tool that can go from 3D to this, you know, quantum state, this non-local sort of consciousness area, and interface with things in a psychic way. And I was really intrigued by that. I interviewed her. She introduced me afterward to Russ Targ, who's, you know, the former founder and head guy of the Stargate program with the intelligence community and the military's investigations into psychic abilities. And from there, I spoke to Paul H. Smith, who was part of the DIA's program, and did some stuff on Ingo Swann, and interviewed Chris Ramsay, who does the Area 52 investigations YouTube channel. He did a deep dive into remote viewing and went up to stage 4 of controlled remote viewing, and got his side of things, and then incorporated some Joe McMoneagle anomalous targets that he was remote viewing, like Mars and that more sort of UFO target stuff in the remote viewing world.
Well, it sounds very interesting. Who are the cast members for this movie?
Well, I named quite a few of them there, but we also included Jeffrey Tarrant, who was from the investigations with Kai Dickens, the telepathy tapes researcher. Jeffrey Tarrant does stuff with mediums and psychics, and straps like an EEG net to their brains and monitors brain activity to see what's happening when they're doing these psychic things, which I think is pretty cool. We also interviewed Dr. Jack Kasher, who talked about a psychic that he knew was hired by the government to communicate with extraterrestrial beings secretly. And yeah, we just kind of covered a whole bunch of different historical stuff with Ingo Swann as well, and Pat Price and the leaders of this remote viewing movement, really.
It does seem, I'm a remote viewer, and it does seem like people are much more open to the idea now. And I don't know if it's because they're having experiences themselves, or if it's just a general thing that, you know, the public is just becoming more aware. But it does seem to be more accepted.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that all of us innately have probably some kind of psychic ability. And then with the fact that it's becoming more broadly understood through YouTube channels and conferences like IRVA and, you know, all these ways that in the age of information, the masses are becoming more educated on this like never before.
Right. Yeah, definitely. That's got to be a big factor, because back in the day when you only had a television with a few channels on it, the news never covers anything like that. The radio never covers anything like that. You do have to get it from alternative sources. Have you ever had any psychic experiences?
I can't say for sure. I mean, I've had this sort of basic Rupert Sheldrake experiment stuff where I felt somebody's gaze on the back of my head or something, and I turn around and look directly into their eyes staring at me. Rupert Sheldrake did sort of parapsychology, psychic tests in England. He's a researcher and university professor. And he went out to sort of prove that, yes, like maybe instinctual psychic abilities like that were put inside of us. So if we were in a forest or something and a predator is staring at you, you notice, you didn't hear them, you didn't initially see them, but you felt their presence psychically somehow. And you're like, I got to get the hell out of Dodge, maybe, right? And start running.
Yeah.
But then he also did like psychic connections with non-human intelligence being a dog, you know, which is not a human, but pets. I think the book is called like Pets and Their Psychic Connection to Their Owners. And they had just recorded, like set up cameras systems to record pets figuring out things before the owner ever could be within earshot or visual shot of them. And the test for that was a dog seemed to understand whenever their owner had the intention that they were going to come home. The dog would go to the front door and start waiting. And they thought maybe the dog built some kind of schedule in their mind. Okay, maybe my owner comes home every day at 4 or 5, something like that. But they broke that and proved that no, they just somehow understood that the owner was coming home every time they thought it, because the testers would send the owner home after 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour or something of just arriving at work. And they would see the dog carry out that same behavior on camera. You can find this on YouTube pretty easily, actually.
That's always fascinated me, the connection between pets or animals and their owners or their people. Yeah. How about UFO sightings? Have you had one yourself or more?
I've seen something that spooked me when I was on a flight from Colorado going west around the age of 20. I was sitting in the window seat of this flight, and I used to sit in that window seat all the time. I was looking out the window directly, to the cloud underneath us. At this point, we're pretty high. And I was just thinking about UFOs and thought, wouldn't it be cool if I saw a UFO or something like that? And I looked up at that point, kind of looking towards space, because, below are the clouds, above you're eventually going to hit space. It was bright daylight, sunny, and I saw what looked like a metallic cube. And I kind of panicked. It was just kind of like right alongside the craft. And I reached for this Sanyo sort of pocket camera that I had at the time, started hitting power to try and like get a picture or video of this thing. And right as I had the intention to do that, it started to just kind of drift over the top of the fuselage of the plane. And I was like, did I imagine that? What just happened? The person sitting next to me was probably like, what's wrong with this guy? And I was like, I just saw something really weird. But I didn't really want to spook anybody else and say much more. And later on, when I was like 28 years old, I was living in Australia, and I was actually filming some people over there, which eventually made it into my documentaries. And at night, I was walking in this suburb called South Oakley to Melbourne, and it was very dark. We were on our way, me and this housemate. We were renting this place together. This British guy named Stephen Hockley. We're just chatting, and all of a sudden we kind of see this light emanating in the dark sky way up above us, like kind of space height. And it was just like a bright circle that didn't fade out or burn up like a meteor would. It kind of just went from our periphery right above us to all the way over the horizon and gone. within like seconds, and it kind of did a zag before it did that. And I turned to this guy and was like, "Did you see that?" And he was like, "Yeah, that was weird." And then, we just went to get some pizza.
And that was it.
That was
in
it.
a flash. Yes, I saw a UFO. Let's go get some pizza. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we do. We go back to our normal life because it feels comfortable, right?
100%. And, I'm convinced that UFOs are real. I don't think I manifest them or that I'm like, somebody special. I think that I just have stumbled upon that stuff because I'm aware that that could be a possibility, and I've looked out for it. That's it.
All right. Well, let's show your trailer here real quick, and then we'll talk about it.
Cool. Psychic phenomenon, often associated with extrasensory perception, has been reported by people that encounter UAPs or have alien encounters or remote viewing.
Or are we dealing with something like you said that could be somewhere on a spectrum of different intelligence?
Just doing the research, it's not one intelligence. We're being visited by a plethora of different, call them alien civilizations, for want of a better word, right? So there's this sort of whole spectra of different creatures who have been reported over the last 80 years. They have slightly different craft. All of these creatures seem to interact with human society according to certain guidelines.
It was Ingo Swann who speculated that there was an Earth side language, so to speak, and a space side language, so to speak. And he wondered if the common language was telepathy and ESP.
Edgar Mitchell came walking by. He had been just back from space. He had
Darcy, can you hear me?
Yeah. YouTube down?
I don't know what just happened. It still seems to be going. Let me pause it and start it again and restart.
Sure.
Oh. That is not working.
Oh, you can just always talk about what we've seen.
Yeah. Let's do that. Let me take that out of there.
Sure.
And if people want to see it, they can go to YouTube to see the trailer. And so, yeah, let's talk about that. How can people see your movies?
Most of my films are live on Amazon Prime, Tubi TV, Apple TV, to name a few. But you can always go to my website, occultjourneys.com, and just click on the poster, and it'll take you right through to a page you can watch the film, most of the time for free. I have a film on my YouTube channel, which is also at Occult Journeys, if you want to find it on YouTube, about a trip I did to Puerto Rico to investigate UAP and non-human intelligence sort of history there. That's free to watch on YouTube. And yeah, I've got a bunch of my work up on YouTube Movies, which is their sort of like premium platform now.
Okay, that is good to know. And it's nice that people can watch a movie or documentary at no charge. That's very kind of you to do that. So, with this project, when did you finish the movie?
Finished the film. Yeah, finished the film this year. I want to say probably around April, and submitted it, and it only really got up in September. So yeah, it's on Amazon and Apple right now.
What kind of response are you getting? What kind of feedback?
A lot of people have liked it. I get a lot of people like yourself who have that remote viewing background and sort of like psychic ability background that have connected with me on Facebook and said, "Hey, watch your film. I really appreciate you taking on this subject and doing it in a very analytical, historical, and sort of scientifically minded way." So I appreciate feedback like that.
Well, and it's kind of vindicating for people like me, because 40 years ago when I talked about being a psychic, most people just laughed at the idea. And it took a while to prove it, because you always have to prove it. Got a comment here in the chat, and I want to ask you about this because Angela says she seems to have electrical stuff, or she affects electrical things, and I've noticed that with me and other people. Is that something that's common among abductees?
I haven't really investigated that side of things about abductees, so I couldn't say. Yeah. Don't know.
It's kind of like a static effect, but then also, as far as I'm concerned, for me, if I'm near a phone or a computer or an electrical device or a clock, it'll suddenly stop working or just stop. And then, and also driving down the road and the street lights, as I'm driving down the highway, the big lights will go out as I get close. So they'll just go out one after the other. And I've talked to other people who are ET experiencers that happens to. It's just something strange.
Are you an abductee? Like, have you had that kind of experience?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, my goodness. You've got so many other films too. Let's talk just a little bit about some of these. Transmedium, Fast Movers, and USOs that you released in 2024. What's that about?
Well, I got to sit down with some people that kind of understood the Navy's cover up of USO activity in our oceans on unidentified submerged objects. Got to sit down with Tim Gallaudet, former 2-star admiral with the Navy, who was the chief oceanographer for 7 years and worked for NOAA and such. He witnessed the Go Fast UAP video long before it got released to the public post 2017. And he witnessed the cover up of it at that time because it was removed from his email server and no one was to talk about that again in his working group at the time. Got to talk to Mark D'Antonio, MUFON, video and photographic analyst and astronomer, who had his own USO experience on board a submarine somewhere in the 90s.
Yeah.
Later on got a chance to speak to the second in command for the Navy and asked him about the Fast Mover program, if that existed, which is rumored to be this cataloging program where submariners and other Navy ships track these objects and investigate them in our oceans. And Jim Goodall, aerospace historian and somebody who worked on the Blackbird telemetry systems, as well as the SR-71. He has written about all of our aquatic tech that's supposedly the state of the art in our oceans right now, including all the submarine stuff, and gives his testimony on what's possible, what can shoot around at high speeds, and not really anything that we know of, unless it's using supercavitation, which creates like this air pocket envelope in front of a torpedo or something. So just lots of great testimony to paint a picture of what's possible. And then Richard Dolan, he's in a lot of my documentaries, a friend of mine. I think he's a great researcher, historian, and we go over cases that happen all around water and different places on the planet, around the United States and beyond, that seem to be UFO activity, and what that means.
Awesome. And then last, I want to talk about the secret space UFOs Apollo 1 to 11 that you released in 2023. It's kind of clear what you're going to be talking about, but were there a lot of UFO sightings by astronauts?
Oh, yeah. And even before Apollo 1 to 11, I did other secret space UFO docs, and Frank Borman from the Gemini missions, X-15 pilots that were the very first astronaut designations, where they flew this rocket plane into space for the first time. Robert Walker and Joe White, they reported UAP or UFO sightings, and on and on and on throughout the Apollo space program. So I think there was stuff out there already, and we were just our best pilots were witnessing it, and even today, many pilots are witnessing it around the planet and are reporting it. I think it should be taken seriously by pilots.
Should be, and there's still a stigma attached to it, even though the government says it's okay to talk about it, and then all of a sudden it isn't. So they're still hesitant to talk about it. But I have talked to a number of pilots myself who wish to remain anonymous, but there is a lot that they're seeing.
100%. Yeah, I believe so. Commercial and military.
So now that you've got this project behind you, do you have anything else planned?
Yeah, I'm doing kind of like a follow-up to my last Dark Alliance docu-series, which is kind of about this bit of a secret space program expose. I don't know when that's going to get released, but I'm just working away at it, and hopefully it'll be good to go in the near future.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. So want to see and connect with Darcy's Productions, go to occultjourneys.com, and you'll get all the information there. And of course, like you mentioned earlier, you can watch the trailer and the movies, the films on YouTube and also Amazon, correct?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show with me this evening, Darcy. It's been fantastic.
Thank you for having me. Great to chat with you about my work. Thank you.
All right. I appreciate it. And good luck on your next project.
And you take care.
Okay. Darcy Weir, latest movie, The Psychic Phenomenon. It's his 20th original productions. So do check it out. Sounds very interesting. And we have a surprise for you. We have a double feature this evening. We're going to go a little further. We're going to go do a deep dive. We're going to talk about several interesting things with Mr. David Sereda. So please stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few minutes after these messages. Again, check out unxnetwork.com, where you will find our brand new list of most haunted sites around the U.S. We'll be back right after this. And welcome back. This is Onyx News, and I'm your host, Margie K. We're here every Friday evening, but usually we only go for 1 hour. Tonight, we're doing a double feature for you, and this is going to be quite interesting. I have a lot of questions for this gentleman coming up here. You are going to love this because I know you know David Sereda, and David. I just lost your resume. So let me bring David on here. How are you doing this evening?
Good, Margie, good. You know, I've been going at this 3-eye atlas like a boxer, you know, so
oh my gosh,
I'm hanging in there, swinging away at it and fighting you know, all the odds against you know, the conservative mind is my enemy.
Really?
Because you can't be a scientist and pick your data. You know, you've got to look at all data and put it in charts and graphs. And when it comes to whether it's UFOs, spiritual phenomena, I was catching the tail end of you with Darcy there, and he interviewed me for a film a while back. And you know, when you have an experience yourself that you can't explain, you get into this, you know, and that's how I started having my own experiences.
Well, let's start there. Let me ask you what experiences you had and what age did you start having them?
Well, I'm 64 now. I was born among a total, there's 5 boys that my mom had, and 4 of us were born in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. We moved to Berkeley, California in about 1964, and my dad was getting a PhD in psychology. He was working on it, you know, in the 60s, and walking home from school, it was Cornell Elementary School in the East Bay of, you know, near Berkeley, kitty corner to Berkeley. And I saw a clear flying saucer, and there was pandemonium on the streets. Everybody's looking up at it. They know it's not the Goodyear blimp. You know, they know it's not a balloon. It's a craft. And when you see pandemonium on the streets, I'm actually amazed that that case has not been noted in ufology. I'm actually really amazed because years later, I was filming a movie with my wife, Crystal Sarita, who passed away in 2021. We were filming From Here to Andromeda, and an older gentleman came out, and he asked us what we were doing, and I talked about the UFO sighting. It would have been about 1968, and he remembered it. And so, you know, some people probably think I made up the story, but, you know, when you have an experience like that, and following the sighting, it came down really low. I mean, there's no question what you were looking at. And I started having these paranormal dreams of these humanoid extraterrestrials that looked very incredible. They were Nordics, and they didn't use the word Pleiades, but they showed me a hologram of that star system. And then they started showing me in the dreams the counter-rotating fields in the center of the drive. And I'm 7 years old, and you can't imagine what it does to a kid, because you grow up and you see, you know, the university world through my dad, and my mom was an artist and a seamstress at the time, and I've got nobody to talk to about it, but it just sticks with you. You can't let it go. And then my dad got us all into meditation and yoga and spirituality, and I hit meditating hard, and I stayed committed to it my entire life. And I've been doing meditation, breath work, and a lot of advanced frequency work. Like, for example, this, I mean, I have this thing hooked up. This is a staff. It's a very, very high-end staff that my company makes. And I have a very particular frequency going through it. And with this meter, you can see as the meter gets closer to it, it just maxes out. And my entire skeleton and nervous system is vibrating at this particular frequency, which is actually a planet. And just like, you know, in the old days, you're driving down the highway and your family might be listening to a radio station like 93 FM, right? And the whole car in those days with that big antenna on the back of it was in an envelope at that frequency, together with everybody else who was listening at that frequency. So when you change frequencies, you actually are changing location and community. So our nervous system is so sensitive, and I think this is largely responsible for a lot of paranormal experiences. There's a frequency shift that happens in a person, and that's kind of what opens the door, right, to a lot of these experiences.
I agree with you. I've been meditating my entire life, and I'm a remote viewer. And yeah, I use it a lot, and I tell people to do that if they're going to access their psi center and activate their pineal gland. But this piece of equipment you just showed me, and I looked at one of your websites, you've got a lot of these available. How did you come up with the idea to create these things?
Well, firstly, when I took physics at the grade 11 and 12 level, and I stumbled upon, through my older brother Doug, got me into Nikola Tesla, and I started studying Tesla and his coils, and I took Tesla coils to a whole other level. Like, it's, my coil designs have a function of in fact, maybe can I share a screen and just show something?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, so my coils are really designed to take a person to another level, to a next level. In fact, when I started working with frequencies and adding them to my meditation, I noticed that I could. Here's was the real question for me. I would have a paranormal experience, and it might even be from particular ETs from a particular star system, and I would say, yeah, I loved having that experience, but how can I change the frequency and go where I want to go? Like being my own navigator, as opposed to, just having something show up in my lap, right? And so these coils, which are very sophisticated windings that I personally make, and I have jewelers in Sedona, Arizona, where I used to live. These, what you do is like when you look at a stereo system, and a stereo system actually starts at about 40 hertz. And so the brain waves in a human being, the delta brain waves are 1 to 4 hertz. So those won't come out of a stereo. And theta, which is actually the frequency of Earth, and the deep relaxation and lucid dreaming state is in the 7 to 8 hertz. So it's inside of theta. Alpha is deep learning and cognition and brain coherency, 8 to 12 hertz. In fact, even headphones can't go this low. And beta, high cognition activity, 12 to 30 hertz. Headphones begin in this range, right? And gamma brain waves is where stereo speakers start at. But my coils will put out 0.5 to 35,000 hertz all the way up. And so it kind of looks like this. Like if you had a stereo system, let me go back here to coils. I mean, I have so many products on my site. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm just going to give you a quick idea here.
Yeah.
Is you just hook up 2 of my coils. They're actually transmitting light that you cannot see because it's invisible wavelengths. I just used AI to create this animation. So there's 2 speakers and then there's 2 coils. And what that does is it takes you to the point where your nervous system is now getting full frequency response, full frequency. So the planets, like Earth is, well, the fundamental Earth frequency is about 7.48 hertz. The Tesla Schumann fundamental is 7.83. And then Venus is just a touch higher than Earth. Actually, our planets are all in pairs. I really learned this because I calculated the frequencies of all the planets based on their wavelengths. And basically, Venus and Earth are pairs. Mercury's paired planet was planet Vulcan, which was a hypothetical planet that astronomers saw in the 19th century at the Paris Observatory. And we really had a real planet there called Vulcan, and it vanished. And when Vulcan vanished, even after it was confirmed in telescopes in Colorado, it became in my opinion, a hyperdimensional jumping planet, which jumps dimensions, which is probably one of the ultimate expressions of the paranormal. We could go really deep into that because that's what 3i Atlas is showing us. And then you go to Mars and Theia, which used to have a twin, which arguably became the asteroid belt. And Jupiter and Saturn are twins, and Uranus and Neptune are twins. So, meaning their frequencies and their size, wavelengths, are so close. They're all paired. So what I did is I mapped the frequencies of all the planets, and then I built in musical shifts like octaves and a musical sixth pattern, and therefore I can tune a person to a location, and instead of dreaming in a myopic sense of earthbound theta waves, you can dream on Neptune, for example. You can dream on Mars. And this really works. But also that our current brain waves, what I discovered, are actually the muses of the planets, because all the wavelengths, which a wavelength and a frequency is the same thing. They're just mathematically expressed differently.
Uh-huh.
I think our brain is being operated by the planets. And so that's where astrology comes in and psychoastronomy comes in. And that's where we can either accidentally shift frequencies and have an experience that involves visitors or beings from inside the solar system, or we can even jump frequency to a star system like Pleiades. And I think that's what the UFO did to me as a kid. It tuned me to the Pleiades. They got into my dreams the very first night. Like, you know, a lot of UFO contactees will tell you this, that they get into your consciousness and somehow they're communicating with you. So I found also, of course, that the healing part of the brain operates in the delta and the theta range. And again, sound systems cannot take you there because they don't go that low. So I design all of these frequency patterns for healing, soothing, for helping people with trauma, and arguably for sure, people with serious illnesses, I've completely turned around. So that really, really interested me. And I've been making these systems for about 20 years now. So,
well, I've been studying frequency myself. I have a frequency med bed, and I'm altering it somewhat with light frequencies and crystals. And so I'm going to have those available. But what I did not know was that the speakers and the sound systems cannot create this lower frequencies. So this is fascinating.
None of the acoustic med beds could possibly do that. You can't. I have bed systems that are coil based. I use gems in all my systems. So when you pulse a crystal, like if I have this crystal here hooked up to a frequency generator. But for example, any crystal, because crystals are piezoelectric. Yeah. So if you tap this repeatedly and just keep tapping, at a certain point, it will start to emit real energy. But if I put one of these in the middle of my coils, which I do, the power of the gem will magnify millions of times compared to when it's not being tapped, right? So we can have crystals sitting around, but if you have them plugged in to systems like mine and you give them specific frequencies, they start to emit, and then you're sitting inside of the field of the crystal energy, right? And we do this to pendants. I mean, I've been wearing this pendant, this particular one, for about 10, 15 years, and it never comes off. And my bracelets, jewelry goes into these chambers that are like Tesla Tech chambers that I developed about 20 years ago in Sedona. It's about that far now.
The necklace is charged.
Yeah, they don't get charged with sound waves. They go in these. They go through 3 steps, and they go in a chamber for about a week. It's scalar technology at a very high level. Like you'd never want to put your body in there. It's just too powerful. I have different levels of scalar, and so then when it's not just about, like, a lot of people, this is what they do. They make this mistake. I'm not going to get into this stuff until I found out my doctor says I'm dying or I've got cancer. But really, I think every person or every family at least should have a system like this in their house for tune-ups. But more importantly, when you start tuning the human nervous system, which the ancient Pythagoreans taught and the earliest Christians actually practiced using techniques of toning with the voice at very specific pitches, reciting vowels. They had 7 vowels in those days. We have 5. And by doing these toning and vocal exercises, your chakras or your energy centers start to vibrate, but they have to be at perfect pitch. They have to be at the right frequency, not just like if people start chanting a mantra at any old frequency, they might be off key. So you need a frequency as kind of a waveguide to tell you the pitch that you need to be at. And when you hit the right pitch, you start opening up neural pathways that lead to higher states of consciousness. So when you apply the science of sound, which is frequency, to meditation, it accelerates the program. And when you add prayer or intentional work to that, it goes even further. And the religious experience, I mean, I'm a very religious person, not because of belief, but because I had my own personal visions of Christ that started in Topanga, California in October 19th, actually, of 1994. That's 2 days from now is the anniversary. So when I had my first blinding apparition of Christ, who blinded me, brighter than our sun by immeasurable times, and blinded me more with love and ecstasy that is in that light and qualities in that light that are unnameable, it was a transformation of my human frequency after years and years and years of meditating, doing deep breathing, doing breath work, pranayama. I mean, that was my whole life. My whole life was ecology, working as a tree planter part-time and working for some physicists in Los Angeles. I devoted myself to my spiritual practice. And when these Christ experiences started to happen and he started talking to me, I started getting deeper and being guided even more into mathematics and the language of very specific frequencies. What I mean by specific frequencies are precise numbers that might have 10 decimals after the whole number.
Oh, my.
Yeah. They're very, very perfect frequencies. And that's what 3i Atlas is doing too. So
let's go back to this first encounter with Christ that you had. Were you in a deep meditative state at the time?
No, I had been, like, my practice would be mostly Buddhist, actually. I was baptized Catholic as a baby. I actually remember my baptism really well. And I wasn't walking. I think my dad said I was only 4 weeks old. And it got carried out of the back of the car through a gravel parking lot into the church. And I remember the whole thing. And to me, as a baby, I could see that ritual was not the whole thing. There was a way deeper possibility with Christ consciousness. I knew it at that age. I felt the priest was blind, that he was just doing this ritual, and he didn't look like he was illuminated in any way. I knew this at 4 weeks old. So my practice, I got deeply into yoga and gurus, but my main practice was Buddhist. I was doing Vipassana meditation. I attended many courses in that, and I had an experience, like a near-death experience, where I was living in my tent on my father's property because I ran out of money and I couldn't afford to pay rent, like a lot of people. This happens to them. And instead of living in my car, I pitched a tent on the ground, which was a mistake. And a flash flood came October 19th, 1994. And I started getting hypothermia. And I remember leaving my body, and I came upon a crucifix that was made of granite. It must have been 35 feet tall, bigger than the oak trees that were around my dad's house. But I was out of body. And I have a book about that. I mean, people can just go to my website or davidserritawrites.com, and you can see my book Visions. And I thought I had died, and there was a pool of water shaped like a cross beneath the giant crucifix. And it was humming like angels' music, beautiful music, but very quiet. And I put my arms out like this. Of course, I'm in my spirit body. And I fell into the water and got baptized again, because I was already baptized by this priest. And I had no idea what happened, but it felt like the way a mother picks up her child. I felt like I was being taken rather than being in control of flight. Like if I was in control of flight, like a bird, I would say, I'm going to go fly up on that tree branch. I felt like a mother energy was carrying me up. I went way above the clouds, and the sun hadn't yet risen in the Los Angeles basin. And I thought, oh my God, you're dead. And what's going to happen now? And all of a sudden, these tiny little diamonds of light, countless billions of them, they just, from above, behind, below, underneath, they just rushed together and made a deafening sound, and the body of Christ appeared in front of me. So he used, it's like he was omnipresent, omni-existent, and then he collected the atoms of his universal self and came together and instantly blinded me with the most unimaginable love. I was just tears pouring down I could feel the tears pouring down my face in the spirit. And I fell at his feet. You could only look at his feet for 1 second. Oh my God, he's too holy. He's too powerful. And I would hold his feet. And the first thing he said to me is, I've appeared to a number of people throughout history, but at different levels of their spiritual ability. No one has ever seen me in my entirety. They never did back in the time he walked on the earth. And even during the transfigurations, still, he said that's not his entirety. He said no one could possibly bear the entirety of Christ. And he started speaking. And it was long. And he taught me about heaven, what happens to souls after death. And I immediately, after the experience, told my dad I just met Jesus, and my dad was, into his guru in India, and very cool guy. My dad loved Jesus, and he really understood that his son had a vision. I was 33 years old when this happened.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
33, which is how old
33.
Christ was on the cross, and in a way, it was my own crucifixion at that age, because working as a tree planter and trying to raise money for nuclear fusion. And I had this environmental company, and we spent a lot of money trying to raise money for scientists that had the answers, and nobody wanted to invest. So my company went broke, and that's why I was living temporarily there in my tent. And I was so blown away. I was so on fire that I thought I would have had hypothermia, because rains in October in Topanga, high in the mountains, would be enough to give you hypothermia. And I didn't even get a cold. And I started writing and writing and writing and keeping my writings. And then in Easter morning 97, it happened again. And then it happened again in 1999. And then Mother Mary started appearing to me. And I'm this regular looking guy, going to yoga classes every year, going back to my tree planting job in Canada. And I did all sorts of different jobs in LA. And I wasn't in the UFO world yet, not yet. And so I didn't know what was going to happen in the writings that I was collecting in my experiences, but they kept happening. And when these experiences happen, they raise the frequency of me from this human state to such a divine state that I feel like I'm no longer human, because I've been raised up and I've been lifted to so much of a higher level of consciousness where there's no suffering. And I didn't know where my life was going to go. Actually, I didn't know what was going to happen. And I eventually get a publisher who had me give him all my savings, and including an investor. And he stole everything, and he sold tens of thousands of books over the years and never paid a penny.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So Face to Face with Jesus Christ was on Amazon for years and years. And I'm out there spending money promoting it and going to Hawaii and giving lectures. And Christ was coming in through me, and people were feeling it in Maui. I mean, I was a pretty young man then. And then it was about the year, it was 2001, the first time I was on the Art Bell show. And there's something incredible happened. There's something that happened. Oh, wait, there's something that happened. I have to tell you this part of the story, because, you're into you understand the paranormal. This is really important, because this is just before the October 1994 event. So I'm in my business partner's house. We had this company called Green and Blue Corporation. We literally met the richest people on earth to try to get $10 million for this Bogdan Castle Maglich MIT PhD for nuclear fusion. And I mean everybody. We met everybody. The Resnicks who own the Franklin Mint, Michael Jackson's business partner. My friend Nancy Pfister in Aspen, Colorado, introduced me to the richest people in Aspen to try to get the money. Nobody would. Robert Redford said no. Sally Field said no. Jane Fonda said no. I was just getting all these rejection letters, and I'm meeting some of these people in person. In fact, George Stranahan, who just sold Champion spark plugs, which he owned for like almost $500 million, and Nancy Pfister is his goddaughter. She's another story, what happens to Nancy Pfister. But everyone said no. Everyone's saying no. So I'm in the 22nd floor in Century City. It's January the 7th, 1994. And if you know that winter, what happens in LA, you'll see what happens. So I'm in my room, and this beam of light comes in the room at about 2 in the morning, and it just pierces my chest. In fact, I just released, I know I'm jumping all over the place. This is how my mind works.
That's quite all right. It's fascinating.
I just released a recut of my Dan Aykroyd Unplugged on UFOs, and it's on Amazon Prime right now, everybody. Please go see it. I sent you the link, which you can send everybody. But I have a scene of this in the beginning of the movie, because when I released the movie the first time in 2005, the Variety magazine called me a self-made, like a Helmer, somebody who just called himself a ufologist. They had no idea I'd been on Art Bell, I'd been all these major shows. And no, I'm not just a Helmer. I've been at this since I was a kid. And I'm describing this experience that I'm describing to you. So this beam of light comes in my chest and it's loud. And it was frequency. It had a sound, like a humming sound, and it was electrical. And I could see that the beam enveloped me in a diameter of about 30 feet wide. And then it went up another octave. And then it went up another octave, which means it went boom, boom, boom. It went up a total of 7 octaves. And I thought I was dematerializing. I mean, this is January 7th, which happens to be Orthodox Christmas Day. In the Eastern churches, they celebrate Christmas January 7th. I was starting to get scared because it wasn't stopping and it was loud. And the light, I could open my eyes and see it. You know what was happening. I'm on the 22nd floor in Century City, and my business partner roommate is asleep in his room, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to disappear. And somehow it's like sleep paralysis. I could not move if I tried. I couldn't get control of my pinky finger. And it stopped, and I told I banged on my roommate's door and told him, I said, I may not be here in the morning. I sound like a crazy person, but I literally may not be because of what just happened. So what literally happens next is I was studying with the Mormons in Los Angeles, and I go to the Mormon church. I'm at the last stages where I'm thinking of becoming a Mormon for some reason. And I'd been a Buddhist my whole life. And I had accepted Jesus in the churches in LA. I did all that, but I didn't feel what I wanted to feel. I didn't feel this enlightenment. I just felt like I was going to join this club. And yes, I was already making this connection to Christ. And it was the young man, you know, they dress really nice in ties and white shirts in the Mormon church. And I'm in the inner sanctum. I'm not supposed to be allowed in there. And he says to me, go home tonight and pray to God, and you will get a confirmation, and you will know that Jesus Christ is the King of the universe. And this is what this young man said to me. So I went home and I prayed. I woke up at 4:15 to the Northridge earthquake. That really happened. And I felt like I can't take responsibility for this earthquake that killed, you know, over 100 people. And caused all this damage because of a prayer. And I never went back to the Mormon church again. And I said, this can't be the answer that I'm looking for. But that actually happened. And then after some years later, in 2001, I go on the Art Bell show for the very first time. And I'm in the middle of this debate about NASA UFO footage that was given to me through a guy named Martin Stubbs, who's a program manager of a cable TV station in Vancouver, who had archived literally hundreds of hours of mysterious anomalous UAP, UFO activity on space shuttle missions. And my friend Michael Boyle and I were working with Martin to get this footage out to the world. And I go on Art Bell, and I'm arguing with this guy named James Oberg, who was a press correspondent for NASA stuff to the press, and he's trying to say it's not UFOs. And I still have a recording of this. All of a sudden, the show is cut. Okay. And Art Bell's panicking, and he doesn't know what happened to his show. There's 30 million people listening in Art Bell those days. He was the king of radio. He was way beyond Joe Rogan. And we're gone. We're off the air. And all of a sudden, you hear this static, and Art comes on the phone, and he said, I don't know what just happened, but we lost the show. He said, keep talking because I'm recording it, and we'll have it as a replay. But about you know, I don't know how long it was, because I think it's about 6 or so minutes later, we come back on. And the next night, Art Bell says that there were microwave blasts all up and down his valley, and he's about 87 miles from the epicenter of Area 51. And something took out his show, and it took out the satellite that orbits in space around the Earth, and it took out the ground-based networks. So Art Bell, when he's broadcasting, there's two systems. There was the internet, actually, in those days, which was in its infancy. There's the AM and FM bands, and there's the satellite, which repeats it around the world. And all of them went down in the same second. And that had never happened in the history of his show. And so what's strange about that, because I have to backtrack again, I just remembered this, is I had these tapes of the UFOs on the NASA missions, and from Michael Boyle and Martin Stubbs, and I get this call from Art Bell himself, and somehow he got my number, and he said he wants to have me on his show, and I wanted to go on the show about my Christ experience. And he brings these executives on, and these executives want me to tell them about meeting Christ, which is 1994, right? So that's earlier, right? And this is 2001 when Art Bell is going to have me on the show for the first time. And they said, you can't go on the show about that. You can't talk about that on our show. And I then get on the phone with his executive, his producer, Lisa Lyon, and she's having me tell her the story of Jesus again. And she said all the power went out in the Premier Radio Network station. And I physically been to that station in Ashland, Oregon. She goes, there's nothing working in this whole station, not one phone except the phone that I'm on with you right now. And then all of a sudden that phone went out and I lost her. And I thought, they're not going to have me on. And because I'm talking about how I met Christ in Topanga, I mean, what's causing these power outages, right? So then Art decides to have me on about the UFOs. And then I'm on about the UFOs with Jane Boberg, and the power gets cut. And the show gets cut. And the satellite gets cut.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
that's crazy.
It's crazy how many power outages I caused, because then just a few years later, I was at MTV Studios in San Francisco about the same NASA UFOs. And I'm sitting there in the chair, cameras ready, boom, the whole station turned off. They sent me back to my hotel room, and I had to wait till the next day before they could do this little episode with me. And again, on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, I probably caused 3 or 4 major blackouts where I'm on the show, and it's just gone. The whole show's gone. So I don't know. Lisa Lyon wrote in the After Dark newsletter that, you know, she told the story how she was on the phone with me and they were going to have me on the show, and I hadn't been on the show yet, and the power went out, and all the phones went down, and those were landline phones in those days. They shouldn't even be related to the power lines.
Okay. Yeah. As you were talking, I was remote viewing, and I think I might have an answer for you.
Oh, yeah?
On that. I see that you have collected, by various means, a very, very high vibratory rate and an energy field that's really, really big. So when I look at you, I see not just the energy field that goes out as far as your fingers can reach on either side if you hold your arms out. No, this goes way out. And so you affect electronics, and even through the phone, you're going through their systems, especially if you're there in person. It's just too much for the systems to handle. Your energy is just so high frequency. Anyway,
Well,
that's my opinion.
I think it's an interface between that. Like sometimes I'm meditating in here, And I go into this supreme state of light and bliss, which has been happening to me for 9 years now every day. There's so much ecstasy, and the halo field awareness is so bright. There's so much supreme happiness and consciousness. It feels like there's a sun inside of me. And I've had a lot of outages in this studio right here where all of a sudden I just get cut out. But I'm not on giant shows like I used to be. And that technology actually was at a much lower frequency than today's broadcast. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
There's still a lot of outages happening. Richard Hoagland's show, ever since he got into 3i Atlas with me, his show has been completely cut. In fact, every week he's about to start another show and it gets cut. It gets cut. It gets cut. But the YouTube doesn't seem to have a problem. And I'm able to do podcasts. I haven't been on Coast to Coast AM for a few years now, because even in the last few years, there have been some major outages where all of a sudden, like, the power went out in my house and their station went out at the same time here where I am in British Columbia. Wow. So there's really something going on, and it's if it happened once, you could call it a coincidence, but when it's a repeating thing, of course, I went out twice with Art Bell in the very beginning, and then he had me on. Art just kept having me on, and then he sold the show to Premier Radio Networks, and I was transferred to George Noory, and I did that show a lot for many, many years. I was on Ancient Aliens the first couple of seasons. I can't remember how many times Ancient Aliens had me on, and then it just eventually, just the big shows are, I don't know what's happening, because a lot of those big shows haven't interviewed me. And Dan Aykroyd actually did an interview on Joe Rogan a few years ago, and he told Joe Rogan to have me on twice, and Rogan never even called me. And I just wonder, am I blacklisted? Like, I wondered if I even got blacklisted because of...
Well, you never know. That's possible. But also, this is a theory I have. If your energy doesn't mesh with the host's energy on some level, they'll back off because they can't handle your high rate of vibration.
Well, yeah, and I think like here's a 9/11 story, ties into the same stuff. This is wild what I'm going to tell you now. This is really true. Again, the physicist that I work for, Bogdan Maglic, we didn't get the money to finish the nuclear fusion, which is a cubic reactor about this big that fused deuterium and helium-3, which would have given us environmentally benign non-radioactive nuclear energy, 1 billion watts in a cube that is about a 3-meter cube, which is relatively small, like it's a cube this big, would power a whole city. And we had Nobel Prize winners. We had a congressional hearing in Congress under the Clinton-Gore administration, and they shut us down. Clinton-Gore's administration would not allow this to happen.
Oh, boy.
So we switched to landmine and bomb detection, and I go to Saudi Arabia on a plane, and my former business partner got me right in there. The second assistant to the king picked me up at the airport. It was September the 10th that I got there, the day before the Twin Towers came down. And I'm in the royal family's company. I'm right in the highest levels of Saudi Arabia. I'm in Riyadh. And I go to sleep, and the houseboy wakes me up. Mr. David, you must go watch CNN. And I'm like, no, Mr. David must sleep. And he's shaking me. Mr. David, you must wake up now. And I wake up and I see the Twin Towers coming down. And what happened to me there, I had to be put in this basement like a cell to protect me, because even though I had a Canadian passport, they were already starting to shoot. Canadians and Americans were already, because they thought in the Middle East that we were going to nuke them. The United States was going to nuke them. And they were going to start killing any Western visitors there. And so I'm in this cell. It's like a basement bunker, and I couldn't be seen. And I swear with my right hand, I mean, I know a lot of people aren't going to believe me, but the Prophet of Islam appeared right in front of me. I saw him with my own eyes, and he's so powerful that I had to lower my gaze. He didn't have the light that Christ had, but he had immense power and holiness. And I was not qualified to look at him for, I think I lasted 3 seconds. And I looked down, and he had a blue turban on, and I'll never forget his face, and the energy coming off of him was mind-blowing. Why was I seeing him? I didn't know, but he somehow picked to see me. So when I got out of the bunker, and my the royal family who got me back on a plane in the airport, and I went through security and I flew to London, and then I landed in Los Angeles, ABC News 2020, the senior producer of 2020, her name is Olive Talley. I can't remember if that's ABC News or NBC News. The show's called 2020. It's like 60 minutes, but it's 2020. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
They were going to do a huge show because I knew everything about airport security, everything about bomb detection, everything about contraband, which is all illegals that could cross a checkpoint. And I knew why the X-ray machines and the CAT scan machines could not find bombs. They couldn't find anything. But I also knew something else. So I'm being interviewed by her. And these two Utah lawyers put a lawsuit, David Serene and the people of the United States, versus the manufacturers of the X-ray machines at the airport. And they were going to run a story on 2020. And they said that I was going to become a super famous person in America. And they were training me every day because I was going to teach Americans how our airport security systems failed us, because I was a bomb expert. Well, guess what? I get this call one day. Did you write this book, Face to Face with Jesus Christ? And because it was on Amazon. And I said, yes. And they said, the whole thing's canceled. We cannot make you a famous person if you said you met Jesus Christ. And they said, did you meet Jesus? And I said, yes. And said, we can't do this. And I said, well, who's going to do this for you? Who knows, as a civilian, as much about airport security systems and the failure to detect contraband as me? So I had to design a test for them to send military personnel walk right through airport detectors undetected, and I did it with them clandestinely without using my name. They said, you don't want to use my name, fine, but I'm going to prove it to you that they don't work. And the story made the back pages of the New York Times. It was an embarrassment. They all got through. They all got through.
Oh my goodness.
Now, I'm not saying, I mean, that because when I was in Saudi Arabia, I personally saw 3 of the alleged hijackers on their news channels alive with their families. One guy was playing his guitar. He's supposed to be dead. He's supposed to be one of the suicide bombers on the plane, and he's in shock. His kids are running around. I literally saw this in Saudi Arabia. They had nothing to do with it.
Oh my gosh.
I saw this and I knew it. And I told the producer of 2020 that as well, but what I saw, but they weren't interested in that. They were only interested in the failure to detect contraband, illegals, and with those machines. And they don't know how to differentiate between cheese, chocolate, RDX, and C4, which are 2, plastic chemical explosives. And those machines get so many false alarms. The attendants don't know what to do when the alarm goes off. and they can't identify what they're looking at. And plus, a terrorist can mold C4 and RDX into anything they want. And so the false alarm goes off, and they're like, oh, that looks like a Hershey's chocolate bar. Well, chocolate and C4 has the same density. Say a CAT scan machine measures density, and the alarm goes off, and they go, oh, that could be a bomb. And they go, well, and another thing is like you can put this and put a battery inside of it, and the battery is made out of RDX, and then you need a detonator, and the metal detectors are supposed to find the detonators, but they have all plastic detonators, but that's not who did 9/11 anyway. So the point is, this was going to go big, but it was my Jesus book that ended it. The media would not allow me to talk about my experiences that have continued periodically over the years of meeting Christ in person, and the Mother Mary, and also Mary Magdalene I've met. And each one of these meetings is so powerful. It's not like meeting a human being. It's just like the Apostle Paul, who never physically walked with Christ. He was blinded by Christ on the road to Damascus when he was arresting Christians and sending them in for torture. And that's what happened to me. I was blinded. And you're blinded by the light. You're blinded by the love and the ecstasy of God, and it changes you forever. You're never going to be the same again, because you're not a believer in the sense that you're believing based on Scripture. You're believing based on what you really experienced, right, and saw. So that changed me.
Oh, I imagine so.
Yeah, that book is davidsarita-writes.com. People can see that. And the Dan Aykroyd DVD is on Amazon Prime. You can just search Dan Aykroyd Unplugged on UFOs. It's only available in the United States. It's not available in Canada yet. Dan Aykroyd Unplugged on UFOs is totally remade. So people who saw the 2005 cut of that, it's a total, it's the same initial interview, but there's so many more special effects, and to illustrate, what Dan is talking about.
You jazzed it up.
Yeah, I jazzed it up.
All right. I can't wait to see that, because I love watching the first one. And I would love to talk to Dan Aykroyd in person. After I saw that film, I'd love to get him on my show.
Well, him and I became friends initially. He got copies through a friend of mine, got them to him at the House of Blues of the NASA UFOs that Martin Stubbs and Michael Boyle had shared with me. And then Dan just wanted to have me to the House of Blues all the time. We had these conversations, and I'm like, we should be recording these conversations, Dan, because the kind of stuff that Dan and I talked about is off the books, and you have to know what kind of questions to ask him to get into his mind. And I think he liked the conversations we had. And one day he meets this woman on Sunset Boulevard, and he invites her to a dinner, and he sits her in front of me, and that was my future wife. I met my wife because of Dan Aykroyd. And
oh my goodness,
my two daughters would not exist if it wasn't for him. And my wife died in 2021, and that began the beginning. I mean, we have to do another show on this one, because that began the proof of the afterlife and exactly where heaven is. Exactly.
I definitely have to have you come back to deep dive into this subject further, because I find it fascinating. But I definitely want to get to Three Eye Atlas, before we have to quit this evening, because I know that we
got about 10 minutes left.
My people want this. So hey, if we go over a little bit, it's okay. So do tell what you know about this.
Well, I know an enormous amount about Three Eye Atlas at this point, but it's bullseye. So let me preface this by saying that my wife died August the 9th, 2021, which is the anniversary of Nagasaki, actually. And she was a singer. She was a jazz singer and an opera singer. And she calls out my name so loud like a singer. I'm in a hotel with our 2 daughters in Banff, Alberta, Canada. And it just sounded like a beautiful, beautiful operatic voice. And she just calls out my name and she tells me to take the number of days it's been since she died. And when I looked at the number, it was 591 days. And I can just show you this on the calculator first because it's really stunning. And so I take on my calculator 591 days divided by the golden ratio. And the golden ratio is a ratio that is created by Fibonacci's famous number sequence. So you see my calculator, 591 divided by 1.618. 0.33987, like that's to perfection. And that's the orbit of Earth. 365. In fact, it's 99.999% the orbit of Earth, because the orbit of Earth changes a smidgen every year. So in accurate timekeeping, it is so phenomenal what I can do with this number. I divided by the golden ratio again. That's the orbit of Venus. Divided by the golden ratio again, this is a hyperdimensional orbital planet that lines up perfectly with the miracle of the sun at Fatima, Portugal in 1917. Divided by the golden ratio again, that's like 98% of Mercury's orbit. And these upper numbers are planets closer to the sun than Mercury that early astronomers saw. And if I keep going, that's planet Vulcan's orbit, which vanished before astronomers' eyes. And 3 more times, this is the height of the Great Pyramid of Egypt by a factor of 100. So which means if I multiply that by 100, that is in feet, the exact finished height of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. So I build this hyperdimensional solar system model that shows me 9 planets of the angels above the 9 spheres below. And it was actually the poet Dante who wrote the Paradiso about his visions, his actual visions. Dante's Paradiso.
Yes.
And in this, when Dante is sitting there at the highest point where he has traveled with his angelic guide, Beatrice, through each planet in its paradise level, so the paradise Venus, paradise or the paradise Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and then at the time of Dante in the 14th century, we hadn't yet seen Uranus and Neptune yet, but he's describing them and they're coloring perfectly in here. So he was really having an out-of-body experience.
Mm-hmm.
But when he's in the highest point of Neptune, Dante turns from Beatrice and beholds a vision of God as a non-dimensional point of light, ringed by 9 glowing spheres representing the angelic hierarchy, which cascade back towards the sun, just like in my model. And so therefore 591 is actually angelic dominions. And I'll show you the model I created. You're going to see how this ties into Atlas in a second.
Okay.
And this is why. Stop sharing, and then we go share. So this is the model I built using the golden ratio to 591. And 591 just means that position takes 591 days to go around the sun once, right? 365.256 days for Earth to go around the sun. Venus is just under 225 days, etc. Planet 139.51 lines up with the Ascension Day of Christ, the miracle of the sun at Fatima, and St. Francis's Ascension Day. Now, this takes a lot of time to learn this model, and so on and so on. So what's stunning about this number of an orbit of 591 days is it is the bullseye target of 3i Atlas. I'll show you what I mean by that. And 3i Atlas is going to start hitting this bullseye this Monday for 5 days. So watch when I show you this.
Okay.
So I've created a model of this. this is exactly where it's headed. It's showing us, it's giving us a lesson. So I created a graphic, waiting for that to pop up on the screen, my share screen. There. So this white line here is 3i Atlas coming in. I made this model like quite a long time from now earlier. So Mars has an orbit of 686.98 Earth days. Earth has 365.256. So using a ratio calculation, the bullseye of Atlas is the orbit of the 591 position, which is angelic dominions. That's where it's headed. And it will epicenter there on the 23rd of October. But on the 19th, you see it's going to be right here. And then about the 25th, right here. From its enormous journey through the galaxy, actually, and not getting absorbed by any other star, not colliding with any other planet, it's going right for that. And on the 29th of October, it will reach its closest position to the sun, and we don't know what's going to happen. I'm the only one who would know this number because I've been obsessed with the number 591 ever since my wife gave it to me, 2.5 or 3 years ago when it happened. And I've been lecturing about this for like when it happened, like it's 591 days after August 9th, 2021. So I've known about it this long. So to know about this and to get a number from a deceased person, the closest person to me on Earth, and then we're told a comet is headed right for it. You can't imagine what that did to me and my daughters and my family, because our oldest daughter now is just about 15. And in fact, that's her birthday, October 23rd. Our daughter, Alira, will be turning 15, right at the bullseye of 591. How could this be happening, right? And so then what I did next is I mapped. We'd have to do another show on this because I have to get going inside here. But I mapped the positions. I can show you if people want to read this. You go to, well, you can go to davidsarita.co and click on the link to my Medium page because I have it at the top of my page.
Okay.
And you go. I'm going to show you the article that really explains to you what Atlas is doing. 3i Atlas is doing. It is crossing every single planet on its way in and on its way out on a major religious holiday.
Oh, really?
And I'll show you this really quickly if I can get through it really fast, because the article where I describe that is, I have a lot of articles on Atlas here. It's this one, The Hyperdimensional Solar System by David and Crystal Sarita. Notice my wife, because she gave me the 591. And you can see what it's actually doing is it's actually, it might be a different article that it's in. It's not in that article. It's in,
why don't we?
Proof of Intelligence. It's in this one, yeah.
Okay.
It's going to cross each planet on a major religious holiday. It crossed Mars at Yom Kippur, which is the day of Yom Kippur was October the 1st and 2nd, is the day of the government shutdown. The day, the best pictures of it were supposed to be taken on the Mars HiRise camera. And I can take you right now to the Mars HiRise website in 1 minute, and you can see it's been closed ever since October 1st. So we are not seeing the images we're supposed to be seeing of it because they don't want us to see it, because what they saw is clearly not a comet.
Right.
And this is the Mars HiRise site right now, and it is still closed right now. The last images came in on the 1st of October. On the 1st of October, 3i Atlas was at a super close position to Mars. And then it will hit 591 starting this Sunday, the 19th, 20th. Remember, the 19th was the first day I met Jesus in 1994. It's all perfectly timed. And then it's going to pair with Venus on November the 4th, and so on. So I'd have to take your listeners through a whole proper tour of this to see why and how 3i Atlas is so perfectly timed to crossing the orbits of our planets. And at Christmas, it'll be the closest to Earth on winter solstice, actually one day before winter solstice, the 20th of November. And then it's going to basically flatline at this closest position. On Christmas Day, it will be Great Pyramid angle to Earth. And this has been, I measured this. It is so perfect what this thing is doing. And then on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, it releases itself from its closest position. And then it's going to go, it's going to keep going out. And it will go back through the asteroid belt, and it hits major targets in the asteroid belt. It will pair itself with Jupiter's orbit, which is utterly phenomenal how it's going to pair itself with Jupiter's orbit. And supposedly, our Juno spacecraft is going to get pictures of it, but we'll never see them. Because what they saw at Mars on the HiRISE camera, we were not allowed to see. But the Europeans leaked, I'm going to show you really quickly a stunning image of it that is on the that was released on the European Space Agency. This is a real photograph. I know this is going to be hard to look at, but they leaked this. It came out last week, and then they tried to say that what you're seeing is an artifact of the camera because they can't believe what you're seeing, which is this. This is one picture out of multiple pictures of it. It's rotating and glinting in the light, and there's all these incredible geometries. And so what they did, because of all the geometries that showed up, this is the European Space Agency Mars orbiter that took these pictures. So this camera is in orbit around Mars. Nowhere near as good as the Mars HiRISE camera, but a decent camera. And then so what they did is they spun and stacked the images and turned it into a snowball because they didn't want you to see these structures. All I did is go to the website and I screen grabbed on the live play. And this is one of several images I've got. These are highly structured. This thing is highly, highly structured. And it's highly intelligent. And it's marking all of our religious dates. And it knows exactly what it's doing. But its bullseye is the same number that my wife gave me after she died. And I just still, I can't get over that. I just can't get over it because it's like a movie or something. Like, this can't be real. How did my wife give me the number 591 and the bullseye of 3i Atlas is an orbit of 591 days just inside the orbit of Mars? Like, I just don't know how this can be happening, but it is. So
okay, I'm definitely going to have you come back on. We'll talk about 3i Atlas only. We'll just do a segment on
we'll
that.
just do only 3i Atlas.
Right. We'll have to do that. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, David, for taking the time. Appreciate it. Please hang with me as we after I take us out.
Okay.
All right, folks. That is our double feature for tonight, and I'll see you here again next week.